workforce housing is kind of fighting against the stream, and they just can't keep up with the current, which is being driven by the market demand for higher price housing. And so you just can't deliver it. Now, the low income housing benefits from getting public subsidies, direct public subsidies that can help them buy down the cost of land and the cost of the material, the construction cost to build a building. But workforce housing doesn't benefit for that.
Hello, Hal. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you, and I look forward to talking with you both.
So, Hal, can you explain what workforce housing is? Is it affordable housing? Is it subsidized?
Yeah, that's a really good question because people get it mixed up all the time. And one of the reasons people say, hey, regardless of how much money I make, I'm in the workforce. So even if I'm working for minimum wage, I'm working. People that are billionaires are working. So we're all part of the workforce. And people also identify it as being affordable housing. And so it really gets mixed up and confused. And generally, the industry is kind of settled around affordable and low income housing is defined by people making 60% of area median income and less. So in Seattle, that area median income is around $100,000. So that's people making $60,000 and less are kind of affordable. A workforce is generally 60% up to 120% of area median income. So these are people that have regular jobs in our community. They're providing a service. They're actually people that are getting started in their careers will fall into this category, regardless of what their education is. But they have a really tough time finding a place to live in our area at a rent that they can afford. And so that is when people are targeting workforce housing, it's that. And at that income levels, those do not benefit from direct public subsidies. So you can't use things like low-income housing tax credits, money from the city, from the housing levy in the city of Seattle or from the state to develop workforce housing that's in that income level. They can benefit from soft subsidies, and I'll get into that a little bit later in our questions.
Good. So why is it so difficult to develop workforce and affordable housing, housing for the workforce?
Right. So you're already mixing them up there with workforce and affordable. So yes, why it's so difficult is you really think about it is that, in our society where we're basically driven by supply and demand on our economic model, whatever the highest and best use of land will drive the land cost up. And land cost goes up and also construction costs go up as a result of demand for housing. And we have demand for housing in our area at all income levels, at high income levels, workforce levels, and at affordable levels. And all of those drive the cost of 2x4s and concrete up. We all pay the same for that. Land cost, people don't discount their land voluntarily, but just because it's going to rent at a lower rate. And so we're all competing. As a result, all of the cost to build housing will rise to the highest demand level, which right now in our community has been driven by people being willing to pay the most for rent or the highest price for their housing. So that's why most of our new housing production is really targeted for market rate, which is 120% of area median income and less. So workforce housing is kind of fighting against the stream, and they just can't keep up with the current, which is being driven by the market demand for higher price housing. And so you just can't deliver it. Now, the low income housing benefits from getting public subsidies, direct public subsidies that can help them buy down the cost of land and the cost of the material, the construction cost to build a building. But workforce housing doesn't benefit for that. So they're kind of left out, in this stream of production housing is this income level service between 65 and 120%. And there's a lot of people that live in that and need to find housing that's affordable.
So before handing it over to question this, I would say, who falls in that workforce? People think it's hard to kind of imagine what's a position, who are those people in the
It's teachers, nurses, retail workers, a lot of civil servants, a lot of people, administrative staff people, people getting started in the look at the jobs being advertised for when you graduate. You'll find most entry level jobs with a college degree are falling into that level. You also have people that are retired or semi-retired that don't have as much income coming in anymore, and they want to live maybe close to where their family lives. They want to move there because they want to be close to their family or closer to health services, and they can't find a place to live. We have an example. Well, most teachers in our area, they have to, in Bellevue where I live, they have to drive through at least 3 or 4 other school districts to get to Bellevue. The pastors that are preachers in our area, they can't live in the community where their congregation is. So it's a real problem. And these are people that we want in our community. They're the ones who go to the PTA meetings, that are providing services and coming to our retail stores. So it's important that we have those people living in our community, not just commuting to our community.
What's currently being done at the local or state level to make sure workforce housing are more attainable? And what else do you think could help?
Well, there's a lot to be done, and this is a problem not just unique to the Puget Sound area, but it really started in a meaningful way in the major cities, but now it's really found across the country. And I want to back up a little bit on how we got here so we can better understand it. And Jeff can recall in 1991, the state of Washington passed the Growth Management Act. And that drew a boundary around our population centers that says we want to preserve our open space, our hiking trails, our parks, and we want to reduce the sprawl. We don't want to keep building more freeways and roads and have people going out. And so as a result, it took a while for that. There was still some capacity that was available in the areas that were within our Growth Management Act boundaries. But as that land started getting completely gobbled up, we had to go to a higher density model. In our cities, this is where the answer to your question comes in. Our cities and counties were slow to respond to that change. So they kept their zoning in place that existed prior to the Growth Management Act, which was a very low density units per acre, just a few units, 4 or 5 units per acre as the zoning in their cities, which is really developed for people driving single family cars to commute to and from work. And as our density increased, we had to go to a much more dense model. Really common around here. It's 5 levels of wood framing over 1 level of concrete. 5/1 we hear people talk about. And that allows a much more dense housing model, but it's more expensive to build. So we now have a more expensive product to provide to our residents to live in, and that requires us to charge more rent to support that. And we've had a few, turbulent times between the 90s and where we are now. We had, the dot-com crash. We had the Great Recession. We had a pandemic just recently. All of those have had, big decreases in employment. We saw some relief from this, this steady path of rent growth. But we are where we are now with housing that just is more expensive than the people can afford to pay. And some statistics that I found that Microsoft did some research on is that in the last 10 years, we've had job growth, 18% job growth, and we've had an increase in housing of 8%. So we are not building as much housing as our job growth, requires. And on top of that, those jobs that have come into our area are high-paying jobs. Those are jobs that are for the tech employees, the programmers, and they get paid more money. And so they come in and can pay more and driving rents up further and really displacing the rents that would otherwise would have been affordable to people making workforce housing level housing. So, that's been a really big driver for our area. And now what we've seen since they started raising interest rates is where land costs rose, construction costs rose, and we were benefiting from really low cost of lending. Investors' return on investments were lower, cap rates, and if you haven't got there yet, you'll learn about cap rates in your finance class. But the cap rates went down, making the values go up for the properties that people were buying and selling. And that all helped to still produce housing, even though it cost more to build it, because of those favorable financing. Well, here, what, 2-3 years ago now, that all changed. And the interest rates went up, cap rates have gone up of what people expect. And the housing production has gone down, substantially gone down in the last year or so, and is expected to stay low. But what hasn't really changed is land costs or construction costs. Those have been real sticky, they call it. People aren't lowering the cost of their land because they knew what it sold before. They know that it can, they want to be able to get that higher price later until they're just sitting on. They're just waiting for the market to get better. And we've had not just, we might start to see construction costs settle out or maybe go down a little bit, but there's been a big backlog of production that we're still working through. And there's been a lot of spending on infrastructure and other types of development. And that's kept up the demand for things like concrete and steel and excavation and all those types of things. So we haven't seen a commensurate lowering of our cost represented by the decrease in the production of housing. And whether we'll see that or not happen, it takes a long time for that to correct itself. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Maybe too much information.
Can you share a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah. Yeah, I had actually started off as a general contractor. I graduated in engineering, and my first half of my career was as a general contractor. And when I was working, I was a partner at W.G. Clark, a well-known general contractor in our area here. And one of my clients was a firm called Loring Associates, and they were really a community-focused development organization that focused on both acting as a developer for not-for-profits and really trying to find ways to bring the ingenuity of private development into the public and community sphere. And during that time, which is really interesting, you're there on campus, and there was a project there right by Gould Hall called the Commodore Duchess Apartments. And the university, it was married student housing, and they could not figure out how to renovate that building, bring it back onto the market for an affordable at a cost that was reasonable. And as a last resort, they turned to this new thing, a public-private partnership, where they would entertain a private developer that through a not-for-profit, when not-for-profit leased the land for 35 years, could issue tax-exempt debt, lower cost of financing, and then try to bring it in a lower cost that would make the project work. And so we did in that project, it was not a big project, but we did for $7 million, what the university could not do for $11 million. And it worked, and it's very successful, and it stayed leased up. I think the university has bought it back from the not-for-profit, so they now manage it, but it was done. And that goes back to your first question, which I didn't fully answer, which is what can be done now. And some of the tools that are available are, one is how to encourage public-private partnerships to take advantage of some of the avenues that the public has, like lower cost of financing through tax-exempt bond financing, maybe lower land cost that the public entity can put in, knowing that they get a public benefit back as a result of that. Those are what I call soft subsidies. They're not direct dollars coming in. Our state now is leaning in heavily to the tools that they have available and in requirements that they want to see cities to adopt to encourage and require the development of workforce housing. And that includes the use of a tool called the multifamily tax exemption, the property tax exemption. They've just passed a bunch of zoning requirements at the state level that require cities to adopt around missing middle housing. That's another thing you hear out there that does fall into this same category of workforce housing. Whether that missing middle really results in lower cost housing, it'll be lower, but whether it gets down to 80 to 100% of area median income is another question. And they also have they've just passed rent stabilization. That's very controversial. Whether that will work out over time in the long question, many of us question whether that's really a good tool, but that's been put in place right now. They changed for faith-based properties, church properties. They allowed the cities to increase the housing density on church property without going through a laborious long-term comprehensive plan amendment that's required. Bellevue's been very aggressive in that plan. Parking, huge issue. When you go to this higher density housing, it requires that you build structured parking. And all of our parking requirement zoning laws were based on surface parking, drive up. So if you're close to transit, the state now requires that you lower your parking requirements down to at least no more than one car per unit. And many have adopted less than that. And that's a really big deal when you start to build higher density housing, is to reduce the cost of structured parking. So those are some of the big things. Some of the other cities, both the city of Seattle, have passed what we know as MHA, mandatory housing affordability, which was an up zone that required you to produce affordable housing or to pay a fee. Bellevue has just now adopted that for an area in Bellevue called Wilburton. Theirs is a little bit different, and that's the subject of a whole nother conversation. But those are some of the tools. It's around reducing cost, around increasing the land use density. So I hope maybe that, I guess we'll get back to your mixing your questions here together, but how I got into it was I saw when I was on the construction side, I saw the Growth Management Act and the impact that was going to have. I saw the need for developers to understand what it was going to cost to build and how to build efficiently. And I saw the opportunity around public-private partnerships. And so my client, Morgan Associates, asked me to come and join them, which I did. And then I became a partner there, focused on community development, workforce housing, and other development work for not-for-profits. And then in 2008, just before Lehman went under, I started my real estate development company, which was Spectrum. And from that, I would have had the benefit of a client, the University of Washington, that I'd worked with on several projects, and they wanted me to come and help them redevelop their student housing on campus. So what was that, 13 or 14 years later, after multiple phases, we have redone all of the housing on campus. The last one I was involved in is the Haggett Hall, which is under construction right now, and it was delayed while I was there as they could secure the financing for it. But that's kind of the last piece of the major review of the work on campus. So that's a little more background on how I got there.
Could you tell us about a project that you worked on that you're especially proud of?
Well, there's a lot of them. One of my, things I always enjoyed, if you stand on campus there and you know where the George Washington statue is by the George Cafe, and you look down the street there and you see all those buildings. Well, I was involved in the development of all those. So you don't usually get a place where you can stand there and look at a neighborhood and say, I did that, so that's kind of cool. The other one I'm quite proud of is the Publix Hotel, which is in the International District by Wajimaya. I was also the developer for Wajimaya Village, where the grocery store is in the International District. And the Morguchis, who I worked with, they own a Wajimaya. They also own the Publix Hotel. It had sat there vacant for many years. It was an old SRO, single room occupancy hotel. It was in really bad shape. But I walked through it with Mie Morguchi, and we saw through the grime and the peeled paint and the broken windows and the pigeons that were inside that there was an opportunity in this old building sitting right next to the International District Transit Station. So we came up with a way and looked at the layouts to figure out how to bring that building back to life. And I really enjoy working with historic structures, because you really have to get your head into what were they thinking at the time they built it, and what does this building opportunity give to you as compared to you trying to impose on it what you want it to be. And that is it's a really nice building. It's a really nice addition to the International District to bring that back to life and bring activity to that street there. So those are two different things, but both of which I'm proud of. So.
How did you first get involved with the UW real estate program?
Well, that's in the what's really nice about the MSRE program is that the faculty there and the adjunct faculty, they bring in, it's really important for them to bring in people from the industry and give the students that exposure to those individuals to help them create context to learn from it, and also to bring in what's currently happening in the market. So Al Levine, who been interviewed for this by Jeff in the past, he and I had served on several committees through the Urban Land Institute together, and he would call me up every now and then to be a juror for some of the competitions, like the one that you may undertake with your project, capstone project. And the result is I got close to retirement here a few years ago. I called up Al and said, hey, I have more time. And if you need more help, I'm willing to put more time in. And so he's been doing it for a long time. And I think he was very happy to have somebody that could share a little more time in terms of working with the students and working with the class. And that's how I got involved. And then, now he's very happy to have me take the lead from a volunteer standpoint, and then he can fill in and bring his advice in when it's needed on a more selective basis. And I enjoy working with the students. They're very interested. They want to learn. And it's been a really rewarding experience for me.
And what about these days? Are there any projects, organizations, or initiatives you're involved that you're really excited about?
I continue, actually, when I retired, I wanted to be able to spend more time doing just what you suggested, things that you care about that you can't do as much of when you're trying to work. And so my passion, as you can tell, for quite some time has been around workforce housing. And I served on the Planning Commission in the city of Bellevue for 8 years. I've served on a variety of different committees in Bellevue, and I was on the member of the technical advisory group that developed their 2017 strategic housing plan. So I kind of leaned in, and I was the co-chair of the East Side Affordable Housing Coalition after I retired, which is made up of 30 organizations focused on the development of affordable housing. And I continue to work, as an advocate and as a volunteer on that. Our church, I worked a lot on increasing the zoning capacity on faith-based properties in Bellevue. In the church that we attend, St. Andrew's Lutheran Church, we have a large parcel. We carved off an 1.5 acres that is going to be developed for 100 units of affordable housing. And I, naturally am the lead within the church in making that happen. And the Lutheran Synod then asked if I could help be a resource for them, for the entire Synod, which is the Puget Sound area, to help other churches going through the same kind of challenge. And I'm also now on the board of the University of Washington Alumni Association. So the university continues to be a strong anchor for me, and I enjoy providing my volunteer time and expertise to help in any way I can to move the university along.
And you've been such a resource there. As we were talking earlier off the air about even before you were doing the capstone project, when I was a student, we reached out to you, and you were so gracious with your time. And now with the NAIOP competition, where the students are able to ask you questions, all that years of experience in construction and development, and the UW does bring in affiliates in people from the industry like myself too, and we can rely on you for industry, all that experience and advice. And so I always ask all my guests, like, there's so much wisdom you have, but if you could offer one piece of wisdom before I get it from you, I'm gonna say something you said to my class that was one of the things I still quote more often than you may recognize. But you said something that maybe my dad from construction days taught you. You get hurt in the dirt, right?
Right.
Well, I mean, a short little phrase. It means a lot. Now, and I talk to people about the risk of going underground and doing dirt work. But that aside, what's one piece of information, advice, something you might share with people out there?
Yeah, and background of Jeff's question. Before I knew Jeff, I was a general contractor, and his dad was an excavation and dirt contractor, and he was a subcontractor for many of my projects when I was on the general contractor side. So we have an intertwined history. So I actually found a quote that, or an example that came through recently that I think goes along with that same thought, Jeff. And there was a quote from Sam Zell, and we all know who he is, and a major developer and purchaser of properties. I shouldn't say major developers, major purchaser, office equity properties was his development and or company. And he avoided new development, because you can, and this is, real estate is more about just development. It's about real estate as a whole. And this is good advice, is that development has a lot of risks when you don't know what's in the ground beneath you, and there always will be surprises. And it takes a long time for development to come about. And the market that you know today when you start can often be changed by the time your product comes online, whether you're trying to rent apartments or you're trying to lease it. And you're, as a developer or as an investor in that, you are always taking a risk for those things which you have no control over. So out of that comes the thing is that people will often look to buy first rather than development. So you need to be compelled, have a really good reason to think that your development that you're undertaking or investing in will be successful. What is its place in the market? How's it located? But most important is who is on the team that you are entrusting your investment in or your development in. And so you asked earlier about what I would suggest. And the big thing, it comes similar to that book, The Good to Great, and Built to Last. Those are two books that I would suggest. They're not new books, but they're the ideas in there hold true today. Is make sure you have a good team that you're working with, and or if you're investing, that development team you're investing in has worked together. They have specific experience in the product that they are developing, and the team members they have with you, working with them, have all worked together in the past. Because not only can you have things you don't have any control over impact your development, but if the team chemistry doesn't work, that can be devastating. That's when you get in claims and mistrust and delays and all sorts of things like that. So you want to have a trusted team, but get the right people on the bus with you. And that comes out of the Collins book. And that goes everything from the architect to the contractor to the developer to the investor. And when you get that team together and you can do work repeatedly with that same team, it's amazing what can be accomplished. The trust level goes up, the fear factor goes down, the costs go down, the delivery speeds up, and the quality increases. So my advice is really, develop a team you trust, treat them with respect, give people credit and recognition for the work that they've done. And in that, you'll build a really good team. And that when I was most successful, the longest period of time was when we had that kind of chemistry together with a group of people that worked together and enjoyed working together.
Yep, and not only the right people on the bus, but on the right seat on the bus too.
That's right.
Sometimes you got the right team members there, but they don't work well together, or they're doing the wrong job, or so.
Right.
Well, good. I appreciate all the information you provided for your history of the connection to the UW and what you do now. And I love that you're continuing to give back to, the community and the school. So if people wanted to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Well, I am on LinkedIn. That's the only social media that I'm on. And I was even late to the game on that one, but I'm there and people can find me. So that's an easy one, and they can, read what I've done a little bit, those kind of things. I'm Ferris Advisors is the name. I started a company after I retired because I do a little bit of consulting, on the side. We don't have a website, but people can reach out to me, and I can share my email contact too for people that need to get a hold of me. So that's all good.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
All right. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you for the conversation. It was great having you with us.
Yep. I look forward to seeing you this spring.
Yeah.